Welcome to Exploring Digital with Purr, a podcast for entrepreneurs and CEOs who want their businesses to benefit from a digital-first approach. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Exploring Digital with Purr. I'm joined today by Rick Harrison from Make It Clear. Hi, Rick. How you doing?
Hi, very well, thanks.
Good stuff. Well, other than being dressed identically, how's this week looking for you? What have you got going on?
A bit of the same. We're kind of getting a bit more used to the lockdown. The lockdown look, as we've both got that on. Just kind of general work. It's not changed too much for us in the past. I don't know how long. It's 6-7 weeks now. So
Losing
it's
track.
It's kind of over the madness of the initial first kind of couple of weeks of getting used to it. So it's kind of we've almost fallen into a bit of a business as usual almost now, in as much as it can be, kind of thing. So
So your job at Make It Clear is you're a strategist, is that right? Have I got that definition correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so just give a bit of an introduction. So Make It Clear is a design agency. We're usually based in Farringdon in London.
Very nice office.
It's nice, good location. We help a number of organizations, like we've worked with Google, Virgin Media, Orange. General theme for our clients is kind of technology-based products and services. So they need to be able to communicate clearly with their customers and guide their customers to use and get the best out of their services and their products. I work, like say, I'm a strategist. I head up the strategy team. We do a lot of research, customer research, lots of interviews, and we support the other elements of the company. So we have a UX team, a UX kind of department, and also a more kind of graphic design kind of focused department as well. So we help and find the insights to then base the graphic designs and the UX and UI solutions around. So that's kind of a bit of an overview of what we do.
Absolutely. And I know I was speaking to you because I think we met in person probably just a couple of days before lockdown kicked in, and it was one of those moments where we were trying to decide whether to shake hands or not, whether we'd got past that stage. So this bookends, I guess, this experience quite well. So one thing we were talking about back then is how because you guys work with Virgin Media a lot, and you're providing a lot of the material or helping produce a lot of the material for people to be able to do sort of setup and installations at home themselves. So has that been quite full on for you guys in terms of supporting your clients' customers in a time where they're going to have to be more hands-on themselves, I guess?
Yeah, so we've seen that as a potential area of opportunity so obviously Virgin are doing that and have been doing that for a long time now. They have their quick start offering, which is basically allowing customers to set up their services on their own. So it removes the need for engineers to come, and also the idea is that it reduces the need for customer service calls and that kind of thing as well. So we've noticed the fact that we do that for Virgin primarily, and also Orange as well. So we help them with out of the box materials and things like that. So kind of user guides and product guides, that sort of thing. So we've identified that as a potential opportunity for other clients where they might not have that so much previously, but now it's something that they could potentially use as an opportunity to keep things moving and support their clients and their customers more so. With Virgin, because they already have that in place, we obviously haven't had to really make many changes. The big changes that we have done and started exploring with Virgin is the way that we measure and keep track of what's working, what's not, sort of thing. So in the past, we'd do a lot of in-person observations. So we go around people's houses, basically, sit down and just watch them as they try to do the installation and try to make things work. Obviously, we can't do that at the minute, so we're looking at how we might be able to do that, and things such as the obvious answer you would think would be video calls and things like that, but trying to get a customer to get their webcam and all that sorted, especially when they're installing the internet, is
it tends to be one of those things you're on your hands and knees to do, rather than in front of your webcam. And needing the internet in the first place means that the stream itself is pretty tricky.
Yeah, so we've had to kind of pare things back a little bit, and we've looked at kind of how to run or even how to get equipment out to the customers. So potentially sending a GoPro that they could use to keep things moving. So we've been doing a lot of that with a lot of our different customers on how to adapt. Basically, is the theme ongoing, is how to keep doing how to achieve existing kind of objectives and results, but in a different method, and adapting what we do already, and just kind of putting in different methods, I suppose, and different equipment to support that.
I guess there's such an opportunity for any company that can get something letterbox sized through someone's door, and just designing the best quality experience around that gives. If that's the only touch point you get with a customer nowadays, that's pretty critical.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people, there's obviously, it seems to me that sitting and looking out the window, there's this the one thing that is ongoing is delivery drivers. So it seems that that's all okay, but yeah, it's just a case of whether they've got that. Like I say, with Virgin, they've already got those kind of logistics and things in place to have that happen. But there's potentially other customers and wider businesses that aren't our clients that could do that, but maybe they aren't set up at the moment. So what kind of things can we do to help them get quickly set up and quickly get this sort of, I mean, the first thing is getting the product out to them. Obviously, you can't set that up without that. But we've been exploring video guides and online guides, so you don't necessarily have to worry about getting things printed necessarily. You can support them in other ways with different formats.
So one other area I know that Make It Clear has been affected is to do with a particular project that Purr's been involved in as well, which is to do with the installation of a product that we've both been working on into a museum exhibition. And I was just wondering how that had been from the Make It Clear's perspective, and how you had been able to handle this as an agency, just with the challenge of having a project with an indeterminate end date, and where the client sort of is being furloughed, or just having a very uncertain project course for you.
Yeah, I think that's a great example to work from. But just to kind of step back and give an idea of what we were putting in place when all of this kind of thing was looking like something serious in terms of closing offices or quarantine, that kind of thing was going to happen. We looked at all of our clients. I suppose we started with internally the kind of health and well-being of our staff and looking at how we can support that. Then we looked at the clients and what can we do to help them. One thing that actually we already had ongoing from the beginning of this year really was mapping our services. So looking at what services, obviously I mentioned before the three kind of broad areas that we work with, which is kind of the strategy team, the design / UX team, and then obviously project management, which looks after all of that. So one of the things we did was map these services that we do, one of which being the kind of in museum exhibitions kind of thing. So and that includes also that probably falls under the in-person events and live events and things like that. So what we did was put a kind of traffic light system on these services. So as you can probably imagine, live events was the one that had a big red mark on it. Obviously, they're just not happening. We do a lot of work with events for all of our clients, and while we were still in the office, things like Mobile World Congress were just completely cancelled. So we had a bit of a expectation that those would be the sorts of projects that would be impacted. So we put that together, and I guess the main thing is communication with the client. So we were just very open with them about the fact that this might not be. There may not be an end date, so it's just kind of keeping those kind of lines of communication open, and just being as supportive as we can, really. So I think there's one thing, just emailing and saying we're here, kind of thing, but also, is there anything else that we could do? What can we do to keep these projects moving while there might not be an actual date for implementing them? Can we get as much as we can done while we are still working, sort of thing. So in terms of the furlough and things like that you mentioned, again, it's just working around our clients. Some clients have had staff being furloughed. Others have had kind of different situations where they're taking certain amounts of days, or they're doing a few days on, few days off, that kind of thing. So it's just, again, we've been, we've counted ourselves quite lucky in the fact that we've managed to do, move completely remote in terms of working. So we haven't had to furlough people. We've been quite lucky in the fact that the majority of the work that we deliver can be done remotely. There are impacts on that and there are things that it's definitely better to be in the office to do, but from our side of things, it's been more supporting and kind of looking at how we can help the client as opposed to what we can change, sort of thing.
I know earlier you mentioned that you'd seen what you could do for clients in terms of improving the experience that they get out of the box with the delivery from an organization as an opportunity for Make It Clear. And I was wondering do you see any similar opportunities in the events or in-person experiences that Make It Clear could sort of transition or begin to advise clients on if we're going to be seeing an extended period of social distancing regardless?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Just drawing back to that kind of traffic light exercise that we did, that was the next step of that. Once we put the traffic lights colouring in order, we then focused on first the greens, kind of what opportunities were there within them. Obviously, with the traffic light system, the greens were kind of ones that wouldn't really be affected. So it's just kind of double checking that there's no massive potential changes or impact in them. But then when you come to more of like the orangey amber color, things like changing the delivery of an event. So we've been working with so specifically for live events, we have a partner agency that are just live event. They basically started out building stands, that kind of thing. So obviously they're not going to be doing much of that. But we've been in touch with them, and we're working together with them about looking at remote events, basically. So how can you take what is a very kind of physical event, and how can you put that online? What kind of things can you do? So there's things like video calls that we've got, and video conferencing, and pre-recording and stuff like that. But they've also been working on specific tools and capabilities of basically putting the entire stand online, so you can go on and you can visit the stand, albeit on your laptop or your computer, but you're visiting and you're downloading and you're interacting with the physical stand. So there's lots of opportunities. There's also opportunities around owning it yourself as a business, as an organization. So rather than like Mobile World Congress, as we mentioned, rather than being part of that, there's obviously there are potential downsides to that. So obviously the reason that you go to a big event is because you benefit from all of the marketing and all of the people that are going to that event. So there's that kind of loss that you have to address. But being able to own the entire kind of live event gives you a lot more flexibility. You can invite people, you can invite your own guest speakers, you can really own the whole thing. And potentially I'm not sure really whether it's something that brands are already doing. I imagine we're not the only one thinking about remote events. I'm not sure if there've been any that have already taken place, but it really gives the kind of opportunity in the different sectors to kind of position yourselves as in a kind of positive light, I suppose. So it's not just when there's an impact or a negative impact on the economy, you can you being impacted by that, but you also, as an organization, you're able to show to your customers that you're adaptable, and it can potentially give a kind of positive image to your brand, being able to address and adapt.
Absolutely, just how resilient you can appear, and if you can come out of it owning the experience, then there's such an opportunity. Yeah, you mentioned impact there a couple of times, and I know that Make It Clear are very sort of data driven in a way, and it's certainly how you position yourselves as an organization quite clearly. So what sort of is it too early to talk about trends that are coming out of data, or insights that you've gleaned from talking to your clients in terms of how business is changing, or is it already possible to start adapting and pivoting approaches based on analytic data or NPS scores, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think obviously depending on the data and the systems that are set up to collect and monitor that data is kind of a big caveat. If you're not already doing it, then it can be a bit more difficult. But for the most part, you can do that sort of thing almost live or almost in real time in some cases. What we've seen, as we mentioned earlier, it's I think it's about 6-7 weeks in now. So it's not really a new thing. I think. There are things like NPS score that we're looking at monitoring, and that's particularly for Virgin Media, the work that we do with them. One of the big trackers on that is their NPS score. So we're looking at, as I mentioned, the different ways of doing the research. One of the big things is looking at just monitoring NPS and getting that out and keeping that going. Previously, like I said, we'd go into people's houses, and one of the questions on the kind of short survey that we do at the end would be related to that. Now we're looking at doing it through email and other different channels. They're not necessarily new, but it's just ensuring that everything is in place for these activities that are changing. So we have, like I say, we had a existing way of measuring and way of doing things. It's just making sure that the things that are available, like tracking NPS through email, are being done. It's not they're not being forgotten, kind of thing. So, in terms of monitoring data, obviously Google Analytics and stuff like that, they all still exist. They existed before. So, it's just making sure that, and I think it all ties back to the kind of the sort of work that like with the traffic light systems and things like that. It's just that kind of pre-planning. So it's just double checking that that you have everything in place. So it's not it's nothing new. I don't necessarily think in a lot of cases it's not massively different to what you would do previously, but it's just making sure that you've got the right things in place based on these different situations.
I think it's really interesting, the idea that you're looking at the longer term aspect of what your current clients are going through, because I think there's a lot of agencies in that situation right now and trying to establish, does my agency itself need to shift? Do I need to reposition? Do I need to is what I do right now going to be valid in the same way longer term? And I mean, do you think there are any clear insights into ways that make it clear might need to evolve or should evolve? Or are you happy that that the proposition is strong and that what you're providing is actually a pretty good place to be in the sector right now?
I think so. Like I said, I think we do consider ourselves quite lucky in the fact that we're able to work remotely. Majority of the kind of key projects and services that we deliver with a very limited few, such as live events, as we've mentioned, and potentially kind of production elements. So like we've not really been working on too many direct mail pieces or printed materials, that sort of thing. But they're generally the lesser kind of projects that we work. We don't do that as much. They form a kind of broader service with our clients. So we do count ourselves quite lucky, but also we don't want to be complacent with that. So in the kind of initial stages of this situation with COVID-19 and all that kind of everything that brings with it. Like I said, we looked at the kind of mapping our services against the kind of traffic light. We looked at the immediate concerns. So how can we address the initial shock and changes in the ways of working? So both internally, like how can we support the team, make sure everybody can work from home? So a number of the team have laptops, so that's fairly straightforward. Other members of the team, the ones that work with bigger files and the more kind of graphic designers and the production teams, it's just not feasible for them to be working remotely or it is feasible, but there's certain things that need to be done to allow that to happen. So we needed to do that. But then also in the longer term, we wanted to kind of look at how we can help our clients think about the bigger picture sort of thing. So I think the initial shock obviously will give them a focus on immediate concerns and kind of short-term changes, but how do we help them keep sight of what they've been looking at for on their bigger strategies, sort of thing? So kind of just doing the work and doing the kind of exploration for our clients and looking at what we can do to support them, coming up with ideas and opportunities, even if they maybe don't have the time or the capacity at the moment to consider those. We can keep them and just drop them to them as kind of PDFs and reports and things that they can refer to when they do have a bit of time. But just kind of doing that, trying to do that thinking and that legwork that we would do previously, we would have done for them, but just trying to do that a little bit more and trying to, instead of looking at maybe in the past, you might look at an opportunity as a potential project. Maybe more now we're looking at more things in the kind of longer term that we may be able to be involved in, but it's also something that they could potentially do themselves or in another way that is not necessarily a business development kind of route. It's more of a general kind of client service, I suppose, is a way of, is the kind of nuance to that, if that makes sense.
Completely. I think there's such an opportunity for effectively creative agencies to show their value and to show their worth to a client by reminding them that your job is to come up with creative solutions, to think of innovative ways of doing things. And just because you can't mention them offhand in a meeting now, that you're still thinking of them even when you're not in the room with them. So just staying true to that principle and reminding people of it regularly is really valid. So do you think, as an agency, I mean, you mentioned people are having to work from home and maybe taking the big iMac home with them. Do you think is the consensus within the agency that you want to go back to the way things were? Do you think when lockdown is truly lifted that people will flood back to the office, or do you think there'll be a more blended, hybrid model in the future?
So I think it depends how long term the future is, I suppose, or what kind of time period we're thinking about. We are looking. Even last week, we were discussing potentially people going back to the office. I think there's a lot of personal situations where people don't necessarily want to be in cooped up alone, kind of thing. If some of our guys don't or they live in shared houses or whatever the situation might be, where they don't want to be in their bedroom the whole time, basically. So they prefer to be able to go into the office. So I think if we can and if we can do it safely and get them to and from work without having to really use public transport, that kind of thing, then we will look at supporting the people that want to go back. I think there's other people, I probably count myself in that, where I'm not. I think I'm fairly happy being working from home. So I think I'd be, I guess as well, the office, the size of the office, based on the fact that with the social distancing, you can't have everybody back in the office. You can't really sit next to each other for the near future anyway. So I think we're going to do as much as we can to help people get back. Those that want to, those that kind of need that sort of that space. I think one of the big things I found personally anyway is being able to switch from work to like kind of normal personal mode, I suppose, is it has been a bit more of a challenge in this scenario where previously I've moved my kind of workspaces, but generally I've been in the kitchen working on the kitchen table as my office kind of thing. So moving from that to getting at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then I'm still sat in the same seat. Basically, I might not have the laptop open, but it's in terms of your mind and that you focus, it can be a bit of a challenge. So I think some people prefer to be able to switch physical spaces. So I do think where possible, we'll offer the kind of hybrid model. I've been speaking to other people that have made kind of. I think it's just become clearer that work can take place remotely for the most part. Even important meetings can be done on video call when the need arises, kind of thing. So I do think just generally work will be a lot different. I think it'll be a lot. I think people will expect and place a lot more kind of focus on flexibility in working. So maybe not in terms of hours, but in terms of location. I think that will become more of a, and I think it was already becoming quite a big thing. Before all of this, I think people placed a lot of value on being able to work from home and that kind of thing. I think it will only get greater. It will only become bigger in the after the COVID crisis sort of thing. So. Yeah, I think it will.
It's just an acceleration of a process that was already underway. But yeah,
and I think we've seen just offices in general. It costs our office. We have a prime spot outside Farringdon Station, and it costs to have that prime spot. So I think, I think businesses, especially. Moving forward, big business will see that one of their biggest costs is going to be, already is probably their physical locations, their offices, and that sort of thing. So I think when people are trying to make decisions, I think offices will be one of the big ones that sees the kind of cuts. So hopefully we won't have to do that.
No.
It's not something that we've discussed, but I think bigger businesses on a wider scale, I wouldn't be surprised.
Absolutely. It hurts bigger business more than it does smaller business in a way, because just the sheer size of the premises and number, and the relentless sort of drain of expense over it. But there's opportunity, as you say, and agile businesses can avoid these things and can do what they can to optimize themselves and become more profitable as a result.
In terms of the impacts on offices and things like that, I think it's something that just watching the news and reading kind of industry publications and things like that seems to be the one constant of what people are expecting to be impacted quite massively. There's been a lot of discussions around kind of co-working spaces and things like that. So WeWork obviously has had a bit of a negative press, but we've used the Office Group and companies like that, where you basically just get a nice meeting room sort of thing. So I can see in the future a bit more of a reliance on that. So just teams meeting at co-working spaces. I don't know necessarily whether we'll do that as an organization. I think that will remain to be seen. But I do think in the future, those kind of on-demand meeting rooms will be a thing that they were obviously being used previously, but I just think it may be the opportunity where you don't need to pay a monthly rent necessarily for a physical office. You have a monthly subscription and you use it as and when you need for important meetings. So I do think there are still, and it's not necessarily something we've touched on just yet, but the in-person communication is obviously invaluable, and that's one thing that you miss when everything is remote. So I do think there will still be a desire to do in-person meetings and activities when people can, but I think at the moment there's obviously that doesn't seem to be an end in sight. So I think the focus now will be on remote working.
Absolutely, and potentially more focused longer term about away days and conference. Well, getting away to another location rather than to an office as a more of a normal way of doing business with each other, and hopefully places that do require physical locations to be open, like museums, can reopen and we can both finish our projects. But hopefully that's not in the too distant long term, but more like a couple of months away.
Yeah.
But Rick, it's been fantastic speaking with you today, and best of luck with all that's going on at Make It Clear. Well, next time you see one of these, it'll have a traffic light scheme in the background somewhere against all of our clients. Rick, have a great day. Speak soon.
Thanks very much. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Exploring Digital with Purr. We'll see you again next time. Thanks for joining. Remember to subscribe and follow us, and to share today's insights with other businesses you know who want to stay relevant in a digital-first world.